All right, so good morning, good morning. I would like to call this meeting of the House and Labor Industry Committee to order. Jonathan, please take the roll.
Dawkins,
Here.
Brennan,
Here by designation.
Donahue,
Here by designation.
Gerald,
Here by designation.
Green, Haddock,
Here by designation.
Kincaid,
Here by designation.
Krajewski,
Here by designation.
Mursky,
Here by designation.
Miller, O'Mara, Scott, Siegel, Young,
Here by designation.
Grove,
Here.
Anderson,
Here.
Barger, Bernstein,
Here.
Cooper, Diorsi,
Designation.
Ecker,
Designation.
Fink, Gleim, Jones,
Designation.
Reichert, Rossi. We have a quorum.
Thank you. First on our today's agenda, I'd like to call up House Bill 265, printer's number 210, sponsored by Representative Powell. Is there a motion to consider the bill? I have a motion by Representative O'Mara, second by Representative Siegel. Ryan, please explain the bill.
House Bill 265, printers number 210, amends the unemployment compensation law to allow individuals who work for an educational institution in any capacity other than instructional, research, or principal administrative to qualify for UC benefits during breaks between two successive academic years or terms, even if they have reasonable assurance of returning in the second year or term.
Thank you. I will now like to recognize the prompt sponsor of House Bill 265, Representative Powell, to offer a few brief remarks.
Thank you so much, Chairman Dawkins, Chairman Grove. Appreciate you all considering this important bill. HB 265 would allow for support professionals to be eligible for employment compensation. Our schools cannot function without the dedicated workers, our janitors, our lunch staff, our bus drivers, our instructional aides. They are the professionals that care tirelessly for our students and ensure that our youngest Pennsylvanians are receiving the best and highest care. Currently, they are not eligible for employment compensation, and so during the summer months when they are not employed, they are often struggling to find new jobs and leaves themselves and their families up to financial insecurity. Aside from this being a way that we can ensure these workers have stable and financial support throughout the year, this also is very clearly an opportunity to address staffing shortages. Across Pennsylvania, and for parents in the room, I'm sure you are uniquely familiar with this, across Pennsylvania it is incredibly difficult to staff these roles. Currently, in the 2023-2024 school year, the Pennsylvania School Bus Association said that there were 3,500 school bus driver positions open. When you speak to the Pennsylvania School Boards Association, they found that 70% of superintendents reported a shortage of institutional aides. And so again, this is an opportunity to make sure that these families and individuals have financial security, but also address the shortage of workers we're seeing across the state. I appreciate your consideration of this important bill.
Thank you very much. On to the bill. Is there any discussion? Open it up to Chairman Grove.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you bringing your bill forward. 100% agree that we do need those support staff to obviously operate our schools. My issue with this bill is it's going to have a short-term and a long-term impact. Over the short term, it will increase school property taxes for residents. Right now, school districts do not pay into the unemployment compensation fund. They are reimbursable. So when these individuals apply for those UC benefits, school districts will get a large bill that they will have to pay. That will increase costs for school districts moving forward. To long term, and I think this is going to be the unique aspect of this, but because of those increased costs, this legislation will undoubtedly, school districts will look to actually privatize those entities and move them out from the school district as employees, but privatize those individuals like we've seen 80% of school bus driving and a large number of school districts, which they've already do. So they will be actually private contractors that will come in and do the work. to create cost savings for those school districts because of the increased cost of the unemployment compensation system. So we'll move, typically union employees over to the private sector to non-union employees. Because of the increased cost of school districts at this time, I will be a no on the bill. But I understand exactly where you're coming from on trying to get, obviously, individuals into those spots because we do need them. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I want to recognize Representative Miller.
Thank you. I want to thank you as well for bringing this bill forward, and in particular, just focus on the challenges that are being felt across schools when it comes to meeting the needs these services, these critical services, are supposed to provide. You know, one of the big issues that we keep hearing about is the massive turnover and the challenges in meeting the demands. And what this has done is it's taken a lot of kids who are supposed to be getting those supports and had them not only wait, but had them wait with greater ratios, had them miss opportunities, had them not being able to get the education they're entitled to. We are cascading problems that has really been built out from 20 years of generally the right thought, which is how do we educate more kids at home in their home schools? And part of that is we meet them with the supports that are needed for them in order to help their learning, right? These paraprofessionals or educational support staff, however they could be entitled at depending on the school district that you're in, do provide critical services almost across the board. The challenge comes up is as they are interrupted, meaning that they can't continue to stay in an underfunded program, or during the summer they're like, how am I paying the bills? Then we end up losing person after person, staff after staff, relationship after relationship out the door, and then have to spend another month, 2 months, 3 months in rebuilding a relationship because a child was expecting that person to be there and they're not. Or, by the way, several of them are getting employed, many of them are being employed during the summer to help with summer learning programs as well that end up not, again, having the same level of support or not having the staff component to it, because they're like, look, I still can't pay the bills. I need to be sure that I can pay the bills in order to do the job. The reality is that we need these careers to be sustainable for everybody involved. And I'm tired of seeing one thing after another mean that kids with special education needs are the ones that have to pay the price while we figure out that maybe now isn't a time for us to care about their educational goals. So I just want to say thank you for looking to strengthen this workforce. We have to find ways to do that. We need stability there. We need kids to count on the teachers and professionals who make a difference in their day-to-day life. So thank you for bringing the bill forward.
Thank you very much, Representative Young.
Sure. Thank you so much for introducing this. What I would say, I'm a legislator, obviously, right? However, I'm a mom, I'm a former educator, and I'm on the education committee. And as we have this hot topic of strengthening our educational system in the Commonwealth, I would say it starts with everybody, and we have to keep humanity first, especially in the field of education. And so this piece of legislation, which is making sure that those who are responsible for educating the students with challenges, and sometimes we have our own personal challenges as educators, and I would say we have to keep people in mind when we are looking into creating things that and systems and these kind of pieces of legislation that's going to help everybody, and this definitely speaks to that. So thank you. I'm going to echo what my colleague said. Thank you for keeping people in mind as we're talking about really strengthening and working hard to progress in our educational space. I will be a yes.
Thank you, Representative Kincaid.
Thank you. I just want to speak a little bit to the cost, and I think fundamentally it comes down to us as legislators. We have the ability to address the cost of this for our schools to ensure that we are fully funding our public education to ensure that they can have unemployment compensation benefits for these folks so that they can continue to be employed. So the idea that we that costs would go up for schools, that's an us issue. That's a thing that we need to solve in the budget, and it's not a reason to not vote for this bill. This keeps people employed. This keeps a roof over people's head and food on the table. And if that's going to increase costs for our public schools, then that is a legislative fix that we need to fix in the budget, and that is something that we absolutely can do. But the idea that we should not keep people in a place that allows them to continue the job that they have, to be able to take care of kids and educate kids and support kids and have that consistency and that stability in their education, because it would increase costs, that's not something that they should be taking on. That's not their responsibility, that's ours, and we can solve that. So we should, and I will be a yes, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else, I just want to thank the prime sponsor for introducing this important piece of legislation. And as districts across the state struggle to fill these vital positions in our schools, this bill could improve recruitment and retention of these dedicated professionals. I would like to talk a little bit about a personal story of me growing up. I don't remember all of my teachers, but I do remember my support staff from my school. And the reason I remember Miss L so well, she drove the bus for kids in the neighborhood who lived a little outside of walking distance. I didn't live outside I walked to school. But why I know Ms. L is because she also was a support staff for recess. And she played kickball with the kids. And like she was the one that would, essentially the pitcher, in this case the roller, of the dodgeball or whatever we were doing. And I remember how vital and influential she was to the children. And when we talk about having these folks in our school systems, they have a real impact on the development of our children. And one of the things that we have to always keep in mind, what are we willing to pay for? Because I can assure you, you may be able to privatize a Miss L, but I can assure you that privatization of Miss L would not have been playing kickball with children. They would have been driving bus to drop children off and pick them up. Children would have became essentially a number of how many kids are on my bus at this time and how many kids get off of my bus. There will be no real interaction with these children. These programs that we talk about, these vital positions are people. We largely do not put names and faces to the allocation of money, which is why we're so easily able to say cut the program or privatize the program. But when you actually put a real person in that position, it makes it virtually impossible to see Ms. L as an individual that I would not pay for as a taxpayer to ensure that the children receive that type of service. So I want to commend you. I think this is an issue that has long been overdue for us to do something about. I agree with our legislators. I understand the concerns, but I challenge folks. What are we prepared to pay for when it comes to our children? So with that, I'm going to ask Jonathan to take the roll.
Dawkins.
Yes.
Brennan.
Yes by designation.
Donahue.
Yes by designation.
Giroll.
Yes by designation.
Green. Haddock. Kincaid. Krajewski. Mirsky.
Yes by designation.
Miller.
Yes.
O'Mara.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Siegel.
Yes.
Young. Grove.
No.
Anderson.
No.
Barger. No. Bernstein. No. Cooper. No. Diorsi.
Designation no.
Ecker.
Designation no.
Fink.
No.
Gleim.
No.
Jones.
Designation no.
Reichard. No. Rossi.
No.
The bill passes.
Thank you. House Bill 265 is reported as committed from the House and Labor and Industry Committee. You're welcome. I would like to call up House Bill 200, printers number 561, sponsored by Representative Dan Miller. And I have a motion by Representative Siegel, second by Representative Krajewski. Ryan, please explain the bill.
House Bill 200, printers number 561, would establish a paid family and medical leave program in Pennsylvania, create a new fund in the state treasury, form an advisory board, and provide powers and duties to the Department of Labor and Industry to administer the act.
Thank you. I would like to now recognize the prime sponsor of this legislation, Representative Miller, for brief remarks on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank everyone for their attention to this issue. I think actually it was 9 years ago that I first introduced a paid leave bill and had conversations with it. I think it was Rep. Donatucci back in the day about trying to find a way to move Pennsylvania forward. A lot of what we talked about were concerns about the lack of support when it came to certain industries in particular, where paid leave had not become a reality, but yet their work was essential for us. A lot of that came to fruition from during the pandemic, where a bunch of things that we talked about were just not in place to help support workers when it came to challenges. Since that time, both before it and afterwards, we continued to deal with the fact that in Pennsylvania, paid leave is a luxury for too many people. And the reality is that so many people who do key work for how any part of our economy works, it hasn't gotten to that level yet. But somehow 14 other states have figured out how to do it. They figured out how to have paid leave that is robust, a paid leave that brings in millions that did not have it before. They figured out how to do so in a way that never undermines collective bargaining. They figure out how to do so while their economy continues to move forward. They figure out how to do so in a way that does not have, segments of their economy fleeing or mass closures of businesses that come up from it. They find a way in doing it instead, in a way to be sure that in those most impactful life experiences, those most sometimes traumatic needs of a family, every worker basically has a chance to be there during those times. This is a blessing for those who have that opportunity. To be honest, it's a blessing for all of us here because we have it. In essence, everyone sitting up here voting today has a paid leave. The paid leave that is granted to us by the taxpayers and how our jobs are structured. It is not a challenge for us. I don't think there's too many of us who have detailed stories about life challenges to which we aren't there for. Now look, this job, like all jobs, are demanding, but those key moments, we get to be there. And the reality that comes up for it here is that this should not be just given to a select few. And it's how we can remain competitive or get more competitive when we're trying to figure out how to grow, in particular, certain industries, but all of our state economy when it comes to jobs. Small businesses, we've talked to, we've addressed concerns, we've found ways to compromise and make the bill better. Those mid-sized businesses are looking for ways to be competitive. They want to offer programs that can be supportive for every one of their employees. But they also need to do it as a whole because they're concerned that they may not, in a short term, see the benefit quickly enough. If we do it all together, then we could be competitive altogether. And we could address those human needs that we all want to be there for. We're glad in this package here, it said 9 years ago, we did not have as much bipartisan support. Our co-primes have contributed mightily to this effort, both in the House and in the Senate. Not only do I thank Representative O'Mara, but I most assuredly thank Representative Mihalik and Representative Tomlinson. And before Casey, what was her name? Help me. Wendy Thomas. Wendy Thomas. Thank you for the audience. Wendy Thomas was there before Representative Tomlinson. So we've been building a coalition that represents, bless you, the challenges that so many families are dealing with. This is a bill that works in other states, that has shown competitiveness in other states, that has lifted millions of people into paid leave, that has helped countless families be sure that they're there when they need to be there. This represents what will happen. It's just a matter of time. And while we're debating this, families are missing those opportunities to be there when they need to be there. Well, we don't need them to wait any longer. We continue to advance and to compromise and find ways forward. We continue to deal with make a bill that works for Pennsylvania. We continue to grow a bipartisan effort here that is far from where Representative Donatucci and I started 9 years ago. It is far from that as we've continued to adapt it and to make it stronger and to make it work for more of Pennsylvania. So I hope, again, that this bill as it continues to grow in this effort, that we see a bipartisan vote here today, recognizing it as a bipartisan bill that is bipartisan in the House, that is bipartisan in the Senate, that will come together to lift up millions of Pennsylvanians and to help make so many businesses competitive in their field as well. So with that, thank you again, Chairman, for the time, and if there are any questions, I would gladly help.
Thank you. We're also joined by some of the co-sponsors of House Bill 200, Representative O'Mara, Powell, Mihalik, who's going to be speaking, who are here now, and I'll offer you to make those brief remarks if you like.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak on House Bill 200. I'm just going to first start out by reading a statement from one of the co-prime sponsors who regrettably could not be here today. I can't replicate the accent, so just pretend. But the good lady from Bucks County states, "This bill is common sense for the world we live in today. It may not be perfect, but it is certainly a start. Let's stop making life so hard for the families of Pennsylvania. We should all be able to take the time off to have a baby, care for a sick loved one, or recover from an illness without the risk of losing our home and everything that we have worked so hard for up to that point. I urge my colleagues for a yes vote on House Bill 200. Let's find a way to come together, compromise, and get this done for the families of Pennsylvania." And I couldn't agree with her more. I think in addition to the 9 years, Representative Miller, that you've spent on it, I think this has been a decades-long conversation across the country. The reality is we're the only developed nation that doesn't have paid family leave. 170 other countries have managed a way to figure this out. I think one of the first big steps that we took as a country was when FMLA was passed back in the 1990s. I think a second step, and I think it was a really big step President Trump made in 2020 when he signed into law an act that provided for paid leave for federal workers up to 12 weeks. I mean, it's a game changer. I think we all sort of draw from our personal experiences, and I do have personal experiences that I'm happy to share with all of you. I don't want to take up too much of your committee time this morning, but I do want to throw some numbers out here. And one is that 60%, so higher than the national average, 60% of Pennsylvanians are working paycheck to paycheck, meaning they need that next paycheck to make their mortgage, to make their rent. They need it for their living expenses. They can't go without it. So when you're in that situation, and the majority of your constituents are, this is across the board, when you're in that situation, you have to make this difficult decision like, okay, my mother is dying. Do I want to spend the last few weeks of her life at her bedside where I should be? You don't have a choice. If you need your paycheck to make rent, you're not going to be there. You're going to be right back at work because you absolutely need that money. For myself, and I'll go back to pre-FMLA, my brother was a type 1 diabetic from the time he was a baby, and he required a lot of care. My mom had to leave the workforce because she didn't have access to anything, paid, unpaid. It wasn't a thing back in the 80s, and I really think that it could have been a game changer for my family in our financial situation. I spent the majority of my life living paycheck to paycheck, including when all 3 of my children were born, and I didn't have access to a single paid day off for any of them. So we made the choice that, I had a baby, had a C-section on Monday, I was back in the courtroom on Friday. I wouldn't wish that upon my worst enemy. This is not a luxury, it's a necessity. I've heard it called, Cadillac plan, or, you should have planned ahead, you should have had a different job. That's just not the reality of our situation in this country. In Pennsylvania, it's not the reality for our workforce. We talk about a lot in this building about workforce development. We talk a lot in this building about making life easier for families. This is certainly one of the most impactful things that we could do as a legislature to make life easier for families so that you're not faced with that difficult decision of, do I want to have an infection after this surgery by going back to work? And let me tell you, the difference between having kids and having no paid leave to I had an emergency spinal surgery in 2021 when I was doing this job. I didn't have to worry. I spent 3 weeks recovering because that's where I needed to be. That's where my doctor said I needed to be. I didn't have to come here. I didn't have to miss a paycheck. And it really was a luxury, but it shouldn't be. Everybody should have access to that. not just us as a legislature, not just the few, it's about 25% that actually have access to paid family leave in the state. It's not a luxury, it's a necessity. I'd encourage a yes vote for all of you today on House Bill 200. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Representative. Now I'd like to recognize Representative O'Mara.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to both of my colleagues who just shared really compelling arguments about why we really need to act on the Family Care Act in Pennsylvania. I have personal experience as a lifelong resident in Pennsylvania to speak to how hard it was, or how hard it is, to live in a state that doesn't provide this type of care. My mom was a single mom after I was 13, and she got pregnant when I was 18. It was a shock for our family and a blessing. But unfortunately, my mom worked at a job where she had to go back to work 3 weeks after giving birth to my youngest brother because she needed to keep our health benefits through the summer. And she worked at one of those school districts, so to your point, Representative Powell, where she didn't have access to benefits in the summer months where she wasn't employed. So that meant I spent the first 2 months of my little brother's life taking care of him. As an 18-year-old, I had no idea how to care for a newborn. I'm lucky that he made it. We all made it, but it was a challenging time for our family. My mom was even more lucky, who was living paycheck to paycheck, that she had an 18-year-old daughter at home who was able to care for her child. I am married to a disabled combat veteran. When we talk about FMLA, we need to acknowledge that it is not accessible for 61% of Pennsylvanians. When my husband was working in South Philadelphia for a small nonprofit, he was suffering from illnesses that he sustained from gunshot wounds in the stomach. He was not eligible for FMLA. He ended up being fired from that employer because he needed to take too much time off to seek care at the VA. Now I'm here in the legislature where I'm 5 months pregnant, and to think about the privilege that I will have as a soon-to-be mother, again, that I can take a maternity leave, that I won't have to worry about whether or not I continue to be paid or receive my paycheck. It's just a gift I wish my mom had. Not a gift, a benefit. We are talking about something that workers have in 14 other states and in 170 other countries across the world. How are we, in the greatest country in the world, in one of the oldest states in the union, unable to provide paid family leave to our workforce? It is unacceptable. We all should feel ashamed about that. And this is a workforce development issue. If women in Pennsylvania participated in the labor force at the same rate as women in countries with paid leave, there would be an additional 126,000 workers in the workforce today. That would mean $4.8 million more wages earned statewide annually. We also can point to cost savings that paid family leave could generate for our state, because it is shown that when you have paid leave, there are reductions in Medicaid-funded nursing home costs, lower reliance on SNAP and other public assistance programs, and we protect families from falling into economic hardship, which will alleviate the need for families to rely on social programs. The last point that I want to make is there is an enormous amount of public support for paid family leave in our nation. Polling shows that 82% of registered voters support a federal paid family leave program. That's 76% Republicans, 79% independents, and 90% Democrats. So I don't want to hear anyone say that your constituents don't want this. They do. All of your constituents want paid family leave. We got elected to this job to represent the people in our communities, to make their lives better. That is what our bottom line should be every single day. And we can't forget the privilege that we all have in this role. We must remember the people who sent us here and take votes that represent their needs, their desires, and what we need to do for them. So I urge all of my colleagues, please vote yes on House Bill 200 and send a message to Pennsylvanians across the Commonwealth that we are here working for you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd now like to recognize Representative Barber.
Thank you. Sorry about that, Mr. Chairman. I'm old and my hearing isn't as good as it used to be. I appreciate the time. So I stopped counting at 9 children. That's how many children my wife and I have. And believe you me, there were times raising those kiddos that that would have been nice. A paid family leave when you're raising 4 kids in a 2-bedroom house on $30,000 a year, that would have been pretty awesome. So I love the idea. I love the intent of it, for sure. But to answer my colleague's question, why can't Pennsylvania do this? My answer would be because we're broke. We're running out of cash. Like we're burning through it so fast, and at some point we have to delineate absolutely critical services from ones that maybe aren't as critical, or things that we would like to do maybe more than others, even though we would like to do all of them. If I had all of the money available to me to do everything, I would like to do everything. But you know, growing up in a very limited household and very limited economic situation, I knew that sometimes you had to give up on what you want so that you could pay for what you need. And I think that's where the state of Pennsylvania is right now. My question is this, but in the spirit of trying to accomplish this, is there any reason why private insurance companies aren't offering this program to Pennsylvania companies now? Does anyone know the answer to that? Other states have private insurance companies offering that. I don't know if, yeah.
It's my understanding that some private employers do have it in Pennsylvania. However, in conversations with stakeholders, it's my understanding that they also potentially need some type of waiver that would allow them to sell plans.
Yeah, I would encourage this committee to explore that. To me, as someone who's got to go home and answer to constituents about why are we spending money we don't have, I would like to see us maybe leave no stone unturned as we look for options to accomplish this good thing. Is there a way for us to look for a private insurance company solution to this? After all, if as many companies as my colleagues say support this, I would think that they would be demanding this service from their insurance companies. I think some of them would be offering it. That just a thought. But the reason I'll be a no on this is because ultimately we're creating another program, and I don't trust that we'll do that well. If we have to show credibility in our ability to run a program, an additional program, what current state program are we running so effectively and so efficiently and doing so much good that we can point to that program and say, see, the state government can totally handle a brand new program. We can do it. We can do it really well. I don't know what that program is that we can so point to and say that there's our credentials. We trust us. We can do this well. I don't think that we can. We're blowing through our rainy day fund. We're blowing through our surplus. I just don't know that we have the ability to do this thing well, even though I think it's important and we ought to try to do it. I just don't think that we can afford it, and I don't think we can do it well. Those are the reasons I'll be a no today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Representative Bernstein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the maker of the bill said he'd be open to a couple questions. I know Representative Barger just asked about employers offering that. Do you know, is there an opportunity for individuals to purchase this paid family leave on their own? Is that something that's applicable?
Representative Miller.
I would go to council. I would note that we did amend a private option in with Representative Haddock last time. So, like, to be honest, there's no offense with it, but I think we've addressed aspects of this before. I just can't tell you if you as an individual on your own, absent, but the private option was put in last term.
Got it. Thank you. Other question would be, I know you said other states have this. Do we have a list of the states that do have this?
Yes.
Or something similar? And what are those?
Yeah, it's, we could give you the list. I'm sure it's here, but it's almost all of our surroundings. So New York, New Jersey. Yeah, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, D.C., Maryland, Massachusetts, Minnesota, New Jersey, New York, Oregon, Rhode Island, and Washington. And Missouri just what?
The state of Missouri had a ballot referendum in November of 2024, and it passed by 57%.
Okay, thank you. And then, what is the total? How is this being funded?
Yeah, this again was another compromise. And again, I appreciate the gentleman, your previous obviously gone through several different versions of how to pay for this. This is just the latest version in an attempt to try and compromise how to do it. So what you're having here is what we did last term, which is the 50-50 split. The amount of state money itself is for managing the program, not funding. So the funding for this is through the people and the employers. It's a 50-50 contribution for each.
So that's a payroll tax, correct?
Hold on a second.
Yeah,
So what
sorry.
you'll find, look, there's no doubt that we're trying to pay for the bill. And if anybody would prefer a different percentage, please offer it, right? We'd gladly consider it. But we've gone the whole gamut from 0 to 100 one way, 100 to 0 the other way. Other states have done 25 to 75, other states have done 50 to 50. If the good gentleman has an offer on how to fund it, again, we'd be willing to discuss. But each time somebody brings one up, we have tried to adopt it, and then, yes, pay for it. There's no doubt about it. It has to be paid for. So whatever, if there's an offer, please.
But just to be clear, so it is a payroll tax on it currently?
No doubt that it will have to be paid for by the employer and by the employee as currently done, unless we go back to a different version that I think you guys rejected already.
Okay. So, listen, I once again appreciate the intent, right? I think it's a well-intended bill. The concern that I have with this is a increased payroll tax, and I think what the good representative said previously is 60% of Pennsylvanians are living paycheck to paycheck. The question is raising their taxes help them? And this is indeed a tax increase on the hardworking people of Pennsylvania. Potentially a tax increase of 35+% of, and I think that is a huge tax increase that with 60% of Pennsylvanians living paycheck to paycheck that they just can't afford. I'm a huge fan of the private option of this and some different things that are available out there. Be happy to work on this with some members. I think Representative Barger had some good ideas with that. Listen, people need to be protected, but that's what insurance is for, and people will have the opportunity to make those decisions on their own. And I think a tax increase of $4.3 billion or 35–40% tax increase on folks is something that they can't afford. So unfortunately, while I appreciate the intent, I'll be a no on this.
Thank you very much. Representative Gleim.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a quick question because I do live in a rural area. So if you're a self-employed farmer, how does this work for that type of person?
So under the bill, self-employed persons have the ability to buy into the program. This includes a sole proprietor, a partner, or participant in a joint venture. They can do it for an initial period of not less than 3 years, as long as they meet the requirements under the law, and then they have the option to withdraw from coverage as well.
So the withdrawal is after 3 years. I saw that. So do they pay with their taxes on a yearly basis, or does this push them into doing quarterlies and they pay? I'm just trying to figure out how this works for them as far as the payment goes.
I'm not sure that's explicitly addressed in the bill. However, under the legislation, the department has the authority and the requirement to promulgate regulations in order to administer the act.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. I appreciate the bill. I really do. I'm going to be a no right now, and I'm just going to say that maybe we ought to start out, given how our budget is right now, with making this optional, and then progressing from there once we actually get more solvent as a state. Maybe try to do some type of a slower process that just doesn't create an entire new program, a social program the size of the UC system. This is a pretty big endeavor here, and I appreciate it. I really do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Representative Rousey? Oh, Representative Jones.
Oh,
Oh, okay, sorry.
is it Rousey?
Sorry. It's
Oh,
Rousey.
I could go.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Blame Jones. No,
I'm not, which one? Okay, I'll go. All right, I'll go ahead and go. Mike, you can go next. Okay, although they say there are compelling arguments for the family, what about the compelling arguments for the business? I'm a business owner. I cannot imagine having multiple people off. We have really big contracts. Those are expected to be fulfilled. How can I do that if I have 10 employees off that specialize in certain areas in testing? I can't just throw someone else into that position that hasn't been trained, hasn't done it for years. This really is troubling to me. I feel like this is another bill against the companies and the business owners. And families thrive when there are good businesses, especially in rural areas, and I'm from a very rural area. We need our employees there to work. So if you need the paycheck, you need to be there because our business may not be there if we don't have the employees to keep it going. We already have so much against us as business owners, such as power outages that we're forced to go on generator, and we have to, instead of focusing on running our business, we're trying to deal with that. Now you're going to take our employees away, that they're not there, and we can't count on them. I just don't see how businesses are going to survive, and for that, I am going to be a hard no on this bill.
Thank you very much. Representative Jones, now you can go.
Thank you, Chairman. Try not to repeat some things that have been said from the Republican side, all of which I agree. Particularly Rep. Barger, who's an extremely eloquent freshman, I must say. I think he covered about everything. I just wanted to emphasize, I beat this drum every chance I can the last few years. Our state's getting older, smaller, and poorer by the day, and that's primarily because we continue to push business out of the state. Many of the states on the list we just heard earlier are doing the same thing. That's why we continue to lose population. That's why the only demographic that's growing in Pennsylvania is the over 65 or possibly over 80 demographic. That's why we lost another electoral vote with the last census, less giving Pennsylvania less say in Washington, all while the North Carolinas and the Tennessees and all of the usual players continue to take our business, our money, and our people, particularly our young people. And I love seniors, but you can't run a state with retirees. And as Chairman Grove is fond of saying, this is why we don't have nice things. I don't question the intention of the bill. I would, if I was going to give some feedback to Rep. Miller, I'm not sure 1 or 2 amendments can fix this. The criteria are way too broad. A starting point might be to align with the Federal Family Medical Leave Act criteria. This is way beyond family and medical leave. I won't take up the time to explain the 10 or 15 examples of why that's true. This probably should be a federal program if there is to be a program. And lastly, we ask about who to pay for it. My suggestion would be this is an employee benefit. Employees ought to pay for it. The employers are already paying a heavy cost when they lose employees. To Rep. Rossi's point, there's administrative cost and whatnot, and it ought to be voluntary. If a lot of people want this, I will tell you, I led a company of 120 people for 11 years. I'm pretty sure not one employee ever came to me asking for this. I'm in my 7th year in the House. I'm pretty sure I've not received one phone call, email, or Facebook post asking for it. So I don't really see this huge drumbeat that says we have to have it. It's well-intentioned. We can't afford it. I think it's poorly written in many regards, but if we wanted to have a voluntary benefit similar to a 529 or a 401k that employees were willing to fund, employers could administer it, probably ought to be done at the federal level, but if we want to do it at the state level, maybe something along those lines. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Representative Scott.
I want to thank the makers of the bill for bringing this bill forward. One of the things, the arguments that I also have heard, I'm not going to rebut any of the ones that we've heard today, but one of the other arguments that I heard recently from a lobbyist who came into my office urging me to vote no against this as well, the employee can just use PTO. Let me just tell you how out of touch with the reality that is with the workers in my district, who when they don't go to work, they don't get paid. There's a woman in my district, a family in my district, who had was pregnant, and they were having this baby. And during the course of the journey, they found out there were complications with the pregnancy. Then, lo and behold, they thought they were going to have to get rid of the baby. But they believed, they prayed, they fasted, and they carried the baby to term. When the baby was born, went straight into heart surgery. Multiple heart surgeries over the course of this baby's young life in the first year of its life. The mother works at a really good job, making really good money, but had limited PTO. Their other employees had to come together and offer to give up their PTO so that she could be at the hospital in the NICU with her baby. Anyone that's ever been in the hospital or healthcare system in our area, they know that doctors make rounds all types of hours of the day. You can't schedule an appointment with a doctor when you're sitting in the hospital. To be there for this child that you carried for 9 months, having heart surgery, multiple heart surgeries, to be attentive to that child, oh, just use your PTO? Unrealistic. I'm going to be a hard yes for this because I support working families in my district and across Pennsylvania. And I look forward to going back to my district and sharing with my constituents why Donald Trump and I agree on something. I look forward to having the debate with my constituents about how President Donald Trump got this right. I look forward to having the conversation in my town hall that bipartisanship does exist. This is a pro-worker bill. This is a pro-family bill. You can't be for families and vote against this bill. I'm voting yes.
Thank you. Representative Siegel.
Thank you, Chairman. You know, we talk a lot in this Commonwealth and frankly the entire country in terms of deficit spending. And I've often thought about the public investment deficit, the fact that for so long in this nation and this Commonwealth, we have failed to invest in people, invest in ourselves. And when I think of paid family leave, I think of the fact that it is fundamentally embarrassing. It is a moral public investment deficit that we are the only industrialized country in the world that does not provide this benefit to our citizens. I think the only other country in company with us is Guinea, and it's insane to me that we thump our chests on the international stage and we trumpet ourselves as the wealthiest, most powerful military force on planet Earth, and yet we can't conjure up the moral courage to say, when you have a child, when you have a loved one that's sick, when you are choosing between poverty and paying the bills and doing what's best for your family and yourself, we put people in an impossible situation. And frankly, not only does this not cost the Commonwealth anything, because much like Social Security, it is funded through us. It is through an employee and an employer payroll contribution capped at 1%. We talk so much here about avoiding the direct costs of doing things. We always say, oh, we defeated this tax. We defeated this increase that you may have to pay. And here's the reality. We pretend that somehow by avoiding the direct costs that there are no costs at all. And often, the indirect costs of not doing something far exceed the direct costs of what we might individually bear as one person. Think about Social Security. Before we had Social Security in this country, seniors literally panhandled on the streets of New York. They lived in poor houses. They were homeless in numbers that we today would find unconscionable. And you know what we all do as a society? We all pay in to the Social Security Trust Fund because we believe as a country and as a society, we have a moral obligation to take care of one another, to pay it forward. I don't hear anybody up here saying that Social Security payroll contribution, let's claw that back because that's money out of your pocket. That's making you financially worse off. We can give that back to you now, and you can handle yourself when you're a senior citizen. Good luck. You can take care of your own retirement security. If we didn't have Social Security today, the poverty rate among seniors would be 40% higher. Be tens of millions of seniors living in destitute, deplorable conditions. And this is no different. We look at working people in the face and we say, we don't want to ask you to pay a little bit more, but we'll let you sacrifice. And this is how much Pennsylvanians lose every year because they have to choose to take unpaid time off. $2 billion a year in wages. Where's the cost there? Where's talking about the cost there? And as far as acting like this is some nebulous new concept that's never been implemented, or we're into the breach here, and my God, what might the consequences be? There are 14 states that do this, and we have feedback from the business organizations that represent employers in those states who have said above board that their employers like it, they overwhelmingly support it, they've adjusted to the new dynamic, they benefit from it because not only are their employees happier and more productive, but they don't waste money on having to retrain new folks. Turnover goes down. At the end of the day, I think both parties profess to be pro-family, but I don't think you can say you are pro-family, that you want folks to have more children and contribute to society and start their families. When you tell them to have that child or to be there for your sick relative, you have to go into poverty. You have to choose whether or not you're going to make the rent this month or put food on the table. It's not pro-family to tell someone who's an expectant mother, good luck the next few months. I wish you all the best. We're so glad you're having a baby. We're so glad you're starting a family, but I don't give a damn. I don't care that you're not going to be able to put food on the table, that your rent is now going to get called into question. We're a country, we're a commonwealth, and that means the common good. And so if anybody wants to make the argument that some direct expenditure hurts us, that we're all just better off on our own, then we should frankly give up on society. Because we either believe that we all have some sort of collective obligation to one another, that there are ways in which we are all better off together, or we frankly don't. And the government exists to do things for us that we can't achieve individually on our own. We have that system right now, a patchwork where some folks get leave and some don't. And it's not working. This does work. It works everywhere else in the industrialized world. It works in 14 other states where families and individuals are better off every day because they don't have to choose between poverty and doing what's best for themselves, caring for a loved one, being there for their newborn child. I used to work at the County of Lehigh before I came here, and let me tell you, the most heart-wrenching thing was getting into the morning, firing up my email, and watching exactly what Representative Scott just described. Employees begging and bartering for other employees' paid time off so that they could get an extra week to recover from a surgery, so they could get one more week with their child. I saw it every day. So-and-so needs a little bit more time off. Can you give them some of your time? Can you give them some of your time? How in the world are we a modern society and we expect people to beg, barter, and plead for an extra day that might be the difference between them recovering fully from childbirth, maybe dealing with postpartum depression and the emotional hardship that comes with having a new child, or making sure that they're fully recovered from whatever surgery they have, or being there for that loved one who might die. Imagine missing the death of a loved one who's sick and ailing because you had to say, I gotta go to work, otherwise I'm gonna be out on the street with my kids. Imagine putting people in that situation and then pretending that you care about families, that you care about your constituents, that you actually care about making this country the greatest country in the world. You cannot say both of those things at the same time. It's a small price to pay for doing the right thing. We did it with Social Security. This is functionally and fundamentally no different. So I will be a hard yes, unapologetically.
Thank you. Representative Kincaid.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it needs to be said that labor is entitled to all that it produces. The simple fact of the matter is that no business exists without the labor that produces what the business exists for. So the idea that we would resent the employees for needing time off because they are ill, because they have a child, because they have a loved one that is sick is incredibly disappointing, because we don't produce anything, we don't make anything, we don't achieve anything without the workers in any business. And post-pandemic, the reality is that more and more places are benefiting from workers who are choosing places that actually do value them as workers, places that have access to childcare, places that have access to paid family leave, places that have public transit, things that make it easier to go to work, to be at work, to be able to have that work-life balance. And so this is just one piece of that. The idea that we would have an issue with allowing people expect that a worker is going to produce at the level that they would be able to if they are sick, if they know that their parent is dying and they can't be with them, if they know that their child is sick and they can't be with them, if they are bent over because of a surgery, stitches, and they can't fully recover because they can't rest and they can't be home. You're not going to get the same level of production from a worker. And you know, as has been said, costs go down. The indirect costs go down when we invest in workers up front. Medicaid costs, costs of having people on social programs like SNAP, like WIC, all of those costs go down. Costs of emergency rooms go down because people can take care of themselves, because they have the time and the ability to take care of themselves. And so this is common sense, and it works across the globe, and it is working in 14 other states. And Pennsylvania is not a unique situation that we said that we can't work it. This is something that is paid for by the workers, by the employers, and the money that is coming from the state is what manages it. This is not something where we are fully funding this from state funds, and I feel like that has been sort of misrepresented here, that somehow there is massive ongoing costs at the state level, and it's not. It is managing how this runs. And to Rep. Barger's question, I would point you to the mine subsidence insurance fund in the DEP as to a fund that is run by the state of Pennsylvania. It's very much like this is very much like an insurance fund. That's an insurance fund. It is the only one of its kind that exists in the entire country, and it is one of the most effective programs that we have, because we recognized 60 years ago that private insurance was not stepping up to actually help people who were impacted by mine subsidence, and so we did it, and it has been one of the most effective programs. So we absolutely are capable of running a program like this, and we do it very well when private industry fails to actually step up and do what they should be doing. So we have the tools, we have the model, we know that these things work, and so the idea that government can't run it is just wrong-headed. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I want to recognize O'Mara for the second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also just wanted to point out there were some questions raised about funding and small businesses. And to the prior speaker's point, there is no state appropriation included in this bill, and it is the amount payable shall not exceed more than 1% of an employee's wages. So as the bill is drafted, it will be 0.5% from the employee and 0.5% from the employer. If you are a small business that has 15 or fewer employers, you are not required to pay their portion of the contribution, but the employer shall still deduct the 50% from their employees' contribution. Also, while we were preparing for this meeting, we received data and a letter from Small Business Majority, which represents small businesses across the Commonwealth. Their study has found that in Pennsylvania, 78% of small business owners support a national paid leave program, and it's because in other states they are seeing direct positives for their employees and for their business. Paid leave improves employee retention, morale and productivity, and reduces turnover for employers of all sizes and helps boost the economy. But small employers recognize they can't do this by themselves, and that's why I really commend Rep. Miller for modifying this bill. In prior sessions, it was more of a burden on the employers. This time around, it is 50-50. I also just wanted to share that recently Johns Hopkins released a study when comparing Massachusetts with other states and productivity of workers. They found that based on providing paid leave in Massachusetts, there has been an annual gain of $1.2 billion in productivity from reduced absenteeism from workers, and that's just workers with depression. That was what their study included. If you take that across the whole state, you're going to see that worker productivity increases, which ultimately will help the bottom line of businesses. And while we did receive opposition from the state chamber, many of our local chambers, which are, in my opinion, more on the ground with our communities, support this because one of the largest things they're hearing from is small businesses are struggling to maintain their workforce. And we are hearing about people leaving Pennsylvania to go to states like New Jersey because they offer better programs for their workers. I was just speaking to a member from Bucks County who said in his area he loses people all the time to New Jersey because they have better programs, including things like IVF coverage, which we don't even need to go into that in this committee. But all around, we are seeing that our state is losing workers because we are not doing enough to support them. And so I really think we have listened to these concerns raised in this committee for the last 9 years and are moving in this bill into a place where we are trying to consider everyone, but at the end of the day, common people in Pennsylvania is what is at, what we are pushing for with paid family leave. Thank you.
Thank you. And Representative Miller for the second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I want to thank all the comments we received today. To be honest, I appreciate people offering some of their suggestions to it. Admittedly, some of which I think we have attempted to address in the past. But I also heard from several on the other side as well talk about the need and recognizing the challenge that so many families are in. I appreciate that, and it gives me optimism that as we move this to a completion, that we will find further support. Look, we started off today not only with comments from myself and Representative O'Mara, but also from comments from Representative Mihalik, who shared some of her personal story as well. What I appreciate very much about both Representative Mihalik and Representative O'Mara is they talked about something that happened that impacted them recently. They talked about what benefited them recently, and they didn't forget what benefited them recently. And that's important. That is a great thing. To be honest, I think I could have began and ended just with their comments entirely because they didn't forget what mattered most. And then when we come up here and we cast votes, they stand up and they say, I remember what it meant to be there. I remember what it meant to have support. I remember what it meant to know that I wasn't going to not be able to pay a bill because somebody had the audacity to be sick, or somebody had the audacity to have a baby, or somebody had the audacity to try and be there when a loved one was out, right? They didn't forget. We can't forget. There's no doubt there's a cost to these efforts. There's no doubt. Nobody is looking to go up there and say that we can print this for free. What we are saying, though, is that we have tried over and over again to find a way forward that brought more people together. My belief is, after 9 years of looking to negotiate that path, this is the best path that I've seen. And when I have conversations with our Republican co-sponsors in the Senate, you're going to hear similar words about how best we can move this issue forward. We still have some work to be done. There's still some things that are going to require some compromise. But let us take this step forward to move this important issue for families, for businesses in Pennsylvania. I believe this can be an impactful day for them and for our Commonwealth. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I now recognize Chairman Grove.
Thank you, Chairman. I did have a couple members approach me and want to get clarification. We didn't have it, so probably your executive director best to cover this. Would this cover having an abortion as well as recovery from abortion under the benefits?
Give me one moment.
So under the bill, that would be determined by the physician that's treating the person, because in terms of qualifying, if it's an individual who has their own issues, they have to have a serious health condition that renders the individual unable to perform the function of their job position.
Okay. All right. So that's the one question I have to provide some clarification to that. So we heard a lot about government programs during the debate today, and one thing is unique. I am a student of government programs. I like to look at them. I do applaud the maker to try to create a funding source to fund a program for once, but unfortunately, what we see time and time again with entitlement programs this large, and I want to discuss the scale of this. Our unemployment compensation program, maximum benefits around $800. This is $1,300. This is double the size of our unemployment compensation. Double the size, right? So you're looking at a cost to run unemployment of $200 million a year. Now, we get federal reimbursement for that. This program, we do not get that federal reimbursement for. Just to implement this from the labor and industry, you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars to just start up this program. Benefit side alone, you're looking at a potential, unemployment is around $2 billion. You're looking at, 1% payroll tax. You're looking at about $4.3 billion. That is singularly going to be the largest tax increase in the history of the Commonwealth. Now, on top of that, we've mentioned the structural deficit built in our current budget. You're looking at a 55% increase of the income tax to cover the structural deficit currently residing in our general fund budget. This will operate outside of that. So you're potentially looking at massive tax increases over the next several years to balance current government programs and entitlement programs on top of this massive expansion into government entitlement programs on top of each other. Now, what will happen in the future? So that 1,300 benefit level will get amended to add more benefits in future years. Future General Assemblies will look at a pot of money sitting in Harrisburg, and they will rate it. That's what happened to Social Security. Republicans and Democrats both did it at the congressional level. I'm an equal opportunity hater when it comes to that stuff. But that's what happens with massive government programs. They will fail upon the finances on themselves because politicians will continue to expand them, increase costs, increase taxes, and if there's any surplus, they will swipe it away and rate it. That's what happens time and time again. That is the reality of our government systems that we know it today. Our unemployment, and this is modeled after our unemployment compensation system. We're handing it over to a department that was complicit in the largest financial fraud of taxpayers in the history of our nation. Under the pandemic, billions of dollars was lost because they eviscerated their public integrity protocols. If you align unemployment compensation with the provisions under this bill, those public integrity provisions that we have placed in bipartisan manner, numerous iterations, year after year, under the unemployment compensation system do not mirror the same provisions under this. Even under a normal operation, without the department eviscerating those public integrity provisions, we still have hundreds of millions of dollars of improper payments flow out of unemployment compensation, overpayments, underpayments, as well as fraud. This will double that. Unemployment compensation requires 1,700 employees, 1,700 new employees. Double that program, you're looking at more costs moving forward. The current budget of LNI is $94 million. Now that doesn't include unemployment because that's booked offline because of unemployment taxes and stuff. But you're basically quadrupling the size, doubling the size of a state agency overnight upon the passage of this. I have massive concerns with giving over a tax structure to unelected bureaucrats. That's what this bill does. 1% tax increase handed over and allows a state agency to decide that taxing level. There is a provision in our state constitution that all taxes have to start in the House. That is a purview of the General Assembly. We don't even allow state agencies to set their own fees. But we're going to allow them to set their own tax structure? That is a dangerous, dangerous principle moving forward. Like I've stated, this has a lot of problems built into it. We already have state or small businesses and businesses in general really suffering from the 174,000 regulations we already have on the books. The amount of regulations to clarify whether abortions are covered or not. Within this, the acts of violence language that is included in this, some dip into our crimes code, some create new definitions that aren't even in our crimes code. They don't match. So businesses looking at compliance are going to have to hire new compliance officers, involve their attorneys to figure out what's covered and what's not covered. That lack of uniformity adds cost to businesses that's not included in this. Those are the issues with large government programs that eventually will end up failing financially because of inactions that the General Assembly will take and bureaucrats sitting in LNI will take. It is inevitable. Go back to time. Proven right every single time. That is a result of programs like this moving forward. I think there's consensus around private option. Obviously, that is a massive way to not have the cost or have another massive government program operate in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. But I have serious concerns over the massive amounts of potential fraud and improper payments of this program. I have massive concerns over the lack of knowing what is in and out of this because definitions are not clear, they are not aligned. I have massive concerns adding God knows how many new layers of regulation on already struggling businesses who are trying to just comply with 174,000 regulations and more on the way out of state agencies every day. I have a real problem with handing over this large of a program over to an agency that has repeatedly failed in the unemployment compensation system time and time again. Do I have to remind members of the complete hell we had to go through under the pandemic when our constituents couldn't get access to unemployment compensation? How many failed computer systems have we had just from the unemployment compensation trying to get it operating? Like, these are all the problems we know of that will result out of this because it's such a huge expansion of government into an area that the private sector can take care of itself. For these numerous reasons, Mr. Chairman, I'll be a no on this bill. Obviously, I'm always open to negotiation, try to put in a spot where we can all have a great kumbaya moment. This is by far not it. And again, I will commend the makers of the bill to try to find a way to actually fund this, but it's not going to work. It will fail upon itself because that's how these entitlement programs have operated over in the history of the United States. So thank you, Chairman. Appreciate your indulgence.
No, thank you very much. And let me start by thanking all the prime sponsors for introducing this important legislation. We heard a lot of testimony today, And what I've always, been able to do as the chairman of this particular committee is sit back and listen to both sides and the arguments that are being made. And some are valid and some may not be. But let me start with some of the issues that were raised. We talk a lot about when a system is not working at its ultimate capacity, but we fail to realize what type of stresses may have been placed on that system. The good chairman talked about the pandemic. He neglected to talk about how we got into a pandemic that required a system to work overtime, and also questioned, what state do you know during the pandemic did it well? Because all systems felt the burden of the pandemic. So it's unfair to highlight one of the worst, health crises we've had in modern history of how well a system worked. The other issue that comes up a lot, and I hear it about cost. What does it cost for this particular program to run? I ask a different question. What does it cost for you not to have an employee to run your business? I'm absolutely sure it's a higher cost. And we talked a little bit, and I always appreciate the good gentleman that talks about we can't have our retirees run our state. When are we going to tell that to Washington? Because when you look around, a lot of those folks look a little long in the tooth. And it's, we have moved past, we have moved past, running the country from an archaic standpoint. We have to be able to move into the future. One of the ways we can move into the future and stop losing our young professionals to these other states is by start treating them well. We talk about, we're becoming older and we're becoming less talented because all of our talent is leaving. We got to ask our question hard. We have to ask ourselves the hard question: why are they leaving? What are those states offering that we are currently not offering, and why shouldn't we be offering those same benefits? I'm very committed to figuring out solutions to very complex problems that we have in this Commonwealth. We all kind of have this underlying agreement that we want the best for our employees. We just have to determine how do we get there? And this is one vehicle to get there. Now, let me be clear. This is the first step to this process. So a lot of the concerns that members have raised, we have a process. And this is the legislative process where we can actually have amendments that we can draft to make the bill better, that you see it. And if we can, figure out how to get the support around those things, we can advance it. This is the very first step. It's going to get to the House floor. It will go through a process of amendments. It will then get over to the Senate and go through a similar process on the other side. So it's a very long process before we get to the finish line, which gives a lot of room for folks to have some type of influence in the outcome of this legislation. But do not be misled by the inability that sometimes you hear that we don't want to do these hard things. We just got to figure out a way to do them and a pathway forward. So I urge all the members to absolutely support House Bill 200. I do find this to be a great piece of legislation that I know the good gentleman from Allegheny County has worked on for many years to try to make better and try to make compromises to this bill. But as I mentioned earlier, until you put real stories and real faces to folks who have struggled to make those decisions between, do I take off from work, or do I see a loved one for the last time, or do I spend a little bit more time with my newborn baby, or what have you. We have to be able to be a state, and I believe a country, that see people a little bit broader than the number in which it may bear to actually get through the finish line. So with that, I'm going to ask Jonathan to take the roll.
Dawkins.
Yes.
Brennan.
Yes, by designation.
Donahue.
Yes, by designation.
Giroux.
Yes, by designation.
Green. Yes. Haddock.
Yes, by designation.
Kincaid. Yes. Krajewski. Yes. Mirsky. Yes. Miller. Yes. O'Mara.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Siegel.
Yes.
Young.
Yes, by designation.
Grove.
No.
Anderson.
No.
Barger. No. Bernstein. No. Cooper. No. Diorsi.
Designation, no.
Ecker.
Designation, no.
Fink.
No.
Gleim.
No.
Jones. No. Reichard.
No.
Rossi.
No.
The legislation passes.
Thank you. House Bill 200 is reported as committed from the House and Labor and Industry Committee. And before we go, I want to make one quick announcement under the new business. We've heard a lot today, and I think this gives us an opportunity. And I want to lean a little bit into my co-chair here, and he has a saying, unleash the liger, right? And I think let's do it. Here's an opportunity. I want to launch a subcommittee to investigate certain trends in the workforce, especially around this grocery store piece around these plastic bags and some other, I find as regressive taxes. But I also challenge some of our members on the other side to join me, and we can come up with a package of bills, true bipartisan bills, that address some of the issues we've heard. Because what I'm hearing is that you all have a willingness to get to a place for workers, but you don't believe that we may have all the pieces to get there. I now give you the opportunity to join me at a table. We meet about issues that we believe pertain to the working class of this state, and we produce bills that we bring back to the committee and pass this session. So that is a invitation for us to truly do some bipartisan work, because I do find it long overdue for us to continue to have a conversation based on who holds the chair, that we only move bills that feels very segregated between the committee. We deserve better. The Pennsylvanians deserve better, and we can show America how to truly lead from the front and not continue to fall to the wayside of our bad judgments. So that's what I want to be able to do. You got a comment, Representative Saab?
Just on any unfinished business, I just want to make sure that we recognize the good gentleman from Lancaster's birthday. We missed it.
Oh,
Happy birthday
happy
to
birthday,
our good
gentleman.
Executive Director John.
Thank you, and with that, we adjourn this meeting.